Hello and good afternoon, good evening to all our audience members today. I'd like to welcome the ACCA members. I'd like to welcome ACCA stakeholders, students, affiliates, whoever have joined us today. I'm very delighted to be organizing this webinar for you all. It's called the Digital Accountant, Digital Skills in a Transformed World, and what a transformed world we're living in at the moment. Our guest speaker today is a senior ACCA fellow member from Sri Lanka. His name is Jihan Perin-Panayagam. Welcome, Jihan.
Thank you.
Great, wonderful to have you, Jihan. Jihan is a great ambassador for us at ACCA across the globe. He is, let me tell you a little bit about him. Jihan serves as a Chief Executive Officer at Informate Private Limited, and he's also Vice President of a very famous brand, John Keells Holdings PLC. Like I mentioned just now, Jihan is a fellow member of ACCA, so he's a very senior stakeholder for us, and he serves on the member network panel of ACCA Sri Lanka, where he does a lot of voluntary work for us, and we're always happy for members to volunteer their precious time to support us. Jihan has been pioneering the country's first ever rural BPO, and which is an achievement that Jihan is very proud of. He also currently serves on the Member Advisory Committee on Information Communications and Technology and the BPM Export Development Board of Sri Lanka, and was previously Director Treasury of /Com. And Jihan, I'll just let you tell the audience what is /Com, this huge acronym.
/Com stands for Sri Lanka Association of Software and Services Companies, Arif. So it was modeled on India's NASSCOM.
Great, thank you very much, Jihan, for that. So let me just recap on what today's webinar is all about. So the session topics we're going to hear from Jihan on are the key technologies transforming the accounting industry. That's all from robotics, artificial intelligence, machine learning, data science. These are all important forces that are impacting us, not only as customers, but also as finance professionals as well. Jihan will also cover the importance of continuous learning in this, because look, this is new. These are the new frontiers that we're all facing, and none of us is you know, a perfect sort of in digital and technology. So there is continuous learning involved here. And also, you know, he's also going to be looking at the likely changes in our work patterns post COVID-19. So I'm really looking forward to listening to Jihan's expertise. I'm also looking forward to the audience as well, you know, chipping in and sharing your insights as well as we go along. So please do make your questions available in the panel on the right. Do write your questions, do write your suggestions. So just be engaged as if we're sitting in the same room together. You know, let's give it that type of feeling. So Jihan, over to you, and for you to present to the audience. Great, thank you, Jihan.
Thank you very much, Arif, and thank you, ACCA, for this opportunity. Thank you to all the participants. Really amazed to see and really enthused to see 300 people joining from across the world. I hope you are all keeping safe in these very unusual times. In the last few weeks, we've seen transformational change happening. So if you just look at the accounting industry, we've seen very traditional people, very traditional industries suddenly transforming. We've had suppliers who used to send paper-based invoices, now compelled to submit electronically. Checks, and I heard finance controllers who were so passionate about why they needed checks, forced to replace them with electronic transfers. Board meetings are happening today on Microsoft Teams. Audits are being conducted online. The workforce, the entire workforce has moved into teleworking, and even a very traditional industry, over 100 years in Sri Lanka, Ceylon tea auction, moved online for the very first time. Banks, typically so strict on resolutions, on paperwork, on signed documents, have moved to digital signatures, banking apps. And with all of this, there is a plethora of warnings of online threats facing us. So just in a few weeks, we've seen transformational change happening in many areas that impact us as accountants. In some respects, this change has been happening, but the events of the last few weeks have really accelerated those. And it forces us and compels us as accountants to be ready for the next wave and to be that digital accountant that will be needed in the future. So I'd like to structure my presentation on technologies impacting the industry. These are very often buzzwords that you would be familiar with, but I will share some examples with you. And also the digital accountant and the future skills that the digital accountant would need. So some of the technology trends are RPA, robotic process automation. So this is happening today. There are projects implemented in my own organization. So I come from the BPO and the shared services industry, and Colombo has been called a center of excellence for accounting services. And we have so many of the leading companies implementing shared services, and many leading BPOs serve the US, Europe, and Australia. And I can tell you that all of these companies have embarked on RPA initiatives. A friend of mine from one of our fellow shared services was saying that he could see the seats being replaced, the people being replaced with bots. In my own organization, it never ceases to fascinate me when I leave late evening and to see a bot working on a machine. It's like a ghost working on the computer. You can see emails being sent, files being downloaded, other files being uploaded, and all of this happening without human intervention. Cloud computing, one of the most popular softwares today is a package called Zero. They're making big waves in Europe, in the US, and in Australia, completely based on the cloud. And today, we will not be able to really survive if not for having so many of our functions and systems and applications on the cloud. Big data analytics and data science becoming one of the hottest new jobs globally. If you look at Sri Lanka, we have been able to be ahead of the curve. Slashcom, the industry that we spoke about, has launched a 4-month diploma program in data science with the University of Kelaniya. And Sri Lanka has a large pool of accountants. And this could be a very easy next step. And in fact, Slashcom has aimed to make Sri Lanka a center of excellence and a hub for data science and analytics. Artificial intelligence and machine learning, connected systems. In the past, you would have your company having your own individual ERP system, but today these systems connect. They talk to the banking systems, they connect with suppliers, they connect with customer systems. So it's a connected world. Then we have digital ethics and the whole area of privacy, and of course blockchain. So these are the technology trends that I have identified have the biggest impact on our industry, and it's important for us to have a good working knowledge of these technologies. These are no longer sort of in the technologies just being spoken of. These are happening today and being used today in our offices as we speak. So if you look at the accounting pyramid, at the bottom you have the transactional work, your AP, your reconciliations, the journal entries. Then you have the mid-tier, the management reporting, the budgeting, and then you have the top tier, the strategic work, the financial strategy, risk. And what is happening today, because of the technology trends that we spoke about, that a lot of the transactional work as well as a component of the mid-tier work is being automated. So if I could quickly touch on each of the functions that we as accountants are familiar with. Bank reconciliations today, you have standardized global formats like the MT940, you have ERP systems being integrated with banks, and you have AI-based tools for automatic matching. So in fact, in a lot of companies that I spoke to, in my own company, it's about 90% of the reconciliations are fully automated. Some people I spoke to in Australia, they don't even think about bank reconciliation because the whole thing happens completely seamlessly, completely automated. So what happens is the bank pushes the reconciliation directly into their ERP on a pre-agreed frequency, maybe daily or weekly. Reconciliations happen automatically. It's something that they don't even need to think about. They've reached that level of automation. Procure to pay, you have electronic invoices today combined with optical character recognition or OCR technology combined with learning systems. So if their OCR initially reads a 6 as an 8 and you correct it back to a 6, the system learns, and the next time it recognizes that vendor invoice, it will correctly transfigure it as a 6. You have the use of RPA. You have integration of ERPs with the banks for payments, online approval and electronic signatures, and also a supplier portal. So I'm very proud that my organization, Informate Private Limited, was the first in the country to launch a supplier portal. We had a very complex accounts payable process where invoices is to be sent by post. There would be a high number of disputes. These invoices would be sent back by post. The suppliers would be very frustrated because they had zero visibility into payment status. But today with this supplier portal, they are able on their mobile as well as the web be able to track the status of their payment at any given time. The moment the payment is done, they can see it in green. If there's a dispute, they see it in red. They can chat with someone who can help resolve that dispute. And we deliberately created a Facebook type of field. Now, this was a system that was created by accountants to automate a procure to pay process. This is a very interesting development. There is a company that I'm familiar with in Europe where they have a middleware system that automates business to business document flow. So you have a customer system which is on SAP. The purchase order is able to be digitally transferred into the recipient system, and it's completely fine if the system is Oracle or any other platform. It is agnostic, whatever the platform. And you have the vendor invoice also being digitally transferred, and all the checks and balances and the validations and controls are conducted and done by this middleware system and automatically fed into the customer system. So there is no need for hands, for human intervention in keying in a supply invoice. So these days with the COVID situation, there's an increasing demand for this particular software. Reporting. So you have analytical tools, Power BI. Today, a lot of accountants are finding some fantastic graphics and graphical presentations using Power BI, Tableau, Google Data Studio, and also tools for predictive analysis and forecasting. We were at a McKinsey forum a few days ago, and they were speaking of Velox, a system called Velox for cash flow planning and forecasting. Today, as you know, cash is critical for companies' survival, and this was a system that was spoken of. So there are very, very user-friendly tools for reporting. Coming to another very traditional area, auditing. Folks who always loved paper and files and signatures and hard copies. Today, our company has an enterprise risk management software where audit reports, findings, evidence, management responses are stored in digital repositories. And follow-up actions can also be tracked with email alerts and then reminders escalated to superiors and so on. And we have a big data analytical tool which sits on top of SAP and identifies unusual transactions compared to historical data of 3 years. And any unusual transactions are flagged instantaneously to senior management for action. So this used to be the function of audits may be conducted annually or biannually. Today it's done online. So this is a statistic from the World Economic Forum. By 2022, 58% of tasks will be performed by humans and 42% by machines. So in the staff meeting 2 to 3 years ago, I told my team the robots are coming. And today it is very much a reality because we have bots working 24 hours in my own organization. So it is very much a reality. Now coming to the digital accountant and future skills required and how we can best prepare ourselves to take advantage of the new wave. We come to the question, so will all of this automation make accountants redundant? Was our time studying ACCA in vain? The answer is that traditional activities and tasks would be replaced, but accountants are still required. However, the role will change. So we need to reinvent the role and master new skills. So the accountant of the future, I always use this example, when you think of an accountant, you think of someone, in spectacles with a receding hairline, rather overweight, someone who's with an unpleasant expression on their face, not the best at relationships. But the accountant of the future will be someone much more exciting. It will be someone who draws insight from analysis and exercises judgment, displays creativity in designing solutions to complex business scenarios, demonstrates leadership, communication skills, and empathy to effectively articulate and convince a board. So you get the picture of someone who is a leader, who has excellent communication skills, excellent interpersonal skills, someone who is creative in designing solutions, designing processes, who is also futuristic, who is predicting the future and advising the board. And a statistic is that many of the new CEOs are being drawn from the finance function, from CFOs. So you have CFOs stepping into CEO roles. It comes naturally because they are so involved in advising the board, in looking at the future, in looking at strategy. So the new role will be a very fulfilling, a very exciting one for those of us who learn and invest in learning the new skills. So the future skills required would be technology know-how. We need to, as we discussed, be aware and have a good understanding and a mastery of things like cloud computing, analytics and data science, information security, desktop skills. We need to be masters of Excel, Power BI. And all of these things today are available. Most of them are available free. So I have so many of my teammates today doing online programs, including from Harvard, using this time, making good use of this time to upgrade their knowledge. So it's a great opportunity, as each of you have done, spending time at this moment to listen to this webinar, to upgrade our knowledge and become familiar with analytics, data science, Power BI, so forth. Then we come to the mindset and behaviors. Agility is required. Whereas the traditional accountant would be a very dogmatic, very process driven. The new accountant, the digital accountant, would be someone who's agile, familiar with dealing with complexity, someone who's given to lifelong learning. An article I read says if you're not reading 5 hours a week at a minimum, you are not being responsible with your career. Lifelong learning, and today it's available at our fingertips. Communication. So I've had the privilege of working with different accounting bodies, and one accounting body that I've recently engaged with, they have Toastmasters programs for their students, and they have batch after batch for Toastmasters, because they recognize that the future accountant needs to be a master communicator and strong in building relationships. A recent ACCA survey identified most accountants felt they were pretty comfortable, had expert ability levels when it came to spreadsheets, to ERP solutions, but less so when it came to blockchain, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. So for a lot of us, sometimes these are terms that we are familiar with, we've heard of, we have a rough idea, but possibly not too many of the details. So this is the time to upgrade our knowledge. In 2016, ACCA's 7 quotients of the future skills beautifully depicts the skills that the future accountant, the digital accountant, would need. So those include intelligence, creativity, digital skills, emotional intelligence, experience, vision, and technical and ethical skills. So I won't go into each of these in the interest of time, but I would encourage you to study and be familiar with ACCA's 7 quotients of the future accountant. And in terms of setting up the ideal future enterprise, focus on communication and collaboration. Focus on training and upskilling, particularly at this time. Learn fast and be willing to fail fast. Try out a pilot project on RPA, on machine learning, on data science. And don't worry too much about the ROI, and be willing to learn. Right? So take a few quick wins, maybe not huge projects. I was at a training recently, and they said when it came to machine learning, don't look for the big wins, look for the quick wins initially, because that's how you learn. You build up experience and confidence, and gives you confidence to move on to the bigger things. And where required, hire new talent with the requisite skills. The Future Ready survey and the report done by ACCA about accountancy careers in the 2020s, in the next decade, 5 emerging career zones. So you have the assurance advocate, the auditing, risk management, compliance, functions which enhance trust and integrity, the business transformer, the architect of organizational change, who drives strategies of organizations. And this could be someone who leads innovative SMEs or goes into a career in advisory or business transformation. Then you have the data navigator, the data scientist, the business partner who leverages data and analytical tools to drive forward-looking insights that deliver business outcomes. You have the digital playmaker, who is a technology evangelist who champions technology adoption and data governance and leverages emerging digital tools. And you have the sustainability trailblazer, the champion performance, who champions the performance management and management reporting, who establishes frameworks that capture and report on activities and reports to stakeholders. So these are the 5 emerging careers that ACCA has identified for the next decade. So in conclusion, the accountant who embraces technology, who is willing to invest in learning and reskilling and reinventing the role, will thrive. Focus on future skills. And this, I would like to reiterate, is the best time to do that. And the new role, we should embrace it because it has the potential to enhance the role, make it a more transformational, a strategic, and an exciting role. And you can actually relieve yourself a lot of the mundane tasks that consumes time, the reconciliations, the transaction work, the handling of mundane inquiries, which you can then automate. So I would be very happy to take, Arif and I would be very happy to take any questions as they come up. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Jahan. That was a wonderful presentation, and I've certainly learned a great deal from you in that presentation. And definitely, I'll be applying, your message of lifelong learning, because I think that's really important. There are some interesting questions coming in, and I've got 1 or 2 of my own. There's a very interesting question from Sayed Adil Rahman, who says, is technology also affecting methods of business valuation significantly? So I'm assuming, you bring on technology, the organization becomes more effective, more efficient. Is that impacting valuation as well?
I'm not very sure. I've not really studied that area, but I would very much imagine that would be the case because investors are today looking at the future, and they are looking at organizations. So that's why you see the technology companies continue to be the ones that are always very, very highly valued.
Yeah.
So I think incorporating technology into your company and investors who are well advised, who are knowledgeable, will look for things like this in your company. Are you a future ready company? So I believe that, though I'm not an expert on this area of valuations, it has to have a positive correlation.
I tend to agree with you. And there's some classic examples. For example, Kodak is one of them, which did not invest in technology, did not adopt digital photography, and they really no longer exist as a major player in photography.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, we've all heard a very interesting story, Arif, of where it was Kodak's own guys. They had a digital team that were coming up, that had really done a lot of work in this new technology, but they were shut down by the guys who were bringing in the money at the time, the analog camera guys.
Yeah, and Blockbuster Video is another one where they had a great business model. They were providing, videos and blockbuster films, but they weren't looking at the technology which was creeping into their sector, which was about online. And Netflix has now just taken over, and you've got other online offerings of videos. Blockbuster could have shifted from old technology to new and kept their valuation, but they didn't.
Absolutely.
So another question we have is from Mudassir Tariq. I apologize, I don't know where these people are located within the Middle East and South Asia, but he says, I believe communication is necessary, and this is a difference where maybe an MBA would take the lead from a qualified accountant. Do you, do qualified accountants, do they lack the communication skills that maybe an MBA has, or do we need to invest more in our communication?
Absolutely. So traditional accountants very much, even if you look at all the jokes that go around, the accountant is always perceived, and those things are based on a degree of fact, because we were always identified as a back office profession. and always someone who is surrounded by fires doing an unpleasant job, and the MBAs come in and they get the more exciting job. So that has been the traditional view of the accountant, which I believe is based on fact. But I think it's changing, right? So today I've seen, so like my former boss, Mr. Ronnie Piris, please check out his site, ronniepiris.com. Such a brilliant communicator. The group finance director of John Keel's, now retired. I've seen some fantastic accountants over my 20+ years of working. So I think it's changing. So I think it's eventually up to each one of us, right? We need to understand that this is a skill that is necessary. It's going to take us forward, and we need to invest that time. So I strongly recommend Toastmasters or similar programs because it's life-changing. I regret not starting off earlier enough. And if I could give one encouragement to each of the accountants out there, you need to market yourself. If you don't market yourself, no one will. Someone else will take the credit for your good work. Right? So you need to be credible in your work. You need to be also visible.
So Johan, how did you build your networks, your networks within your organization? Yep. How did you build those, and how did you build your networks external to your organization?
So within the organization, I think there are many forums. For instance, there are the finance forums, there are CSR activities where you can connect you. There are other projects that you could volunteer for. It's important to get involved. It's important to be the person who volunteers solutions, who gives thoughts, gives ideas, then you become known. And it's also important to deal with people with respect. And
I think
close.
that's a really important point you make, because you have to volunteer, you have to step forward, you can't step back.
Absolutely. And outside the organization, there are many forums like SLASCOM, the Export Development Board. So these are voluntary roles, but it helps to connect in the industry. It helps to build your personal brand. LinkedIn is a great tool. Right, so I invest time on a daily basis on LinkedIn. It's established some great connections, and that's something that I recommend for each one of you.
Yeah, and you just expand on that. I think, you have to volunteer, you have to communicate. No question is too simple. Yeah, no question is silly. You have to ask a lot of questions, and above all, I think in networking, John, you share your own experiences. It's important to find out other people's jobs. Yeah, what are they doing? Yeah, what are their priorities?
Absolutely.
So the next question comes from Hassan Ahmed, who says, I use SAP ERP regularly whilst working from home, but how should I learn softwares like Zero? Are there any free demo versions which I can download?
Absolutely. A great question. So today, a lot of these softwares have their trainings on YouTube. So you can go and access those, and even their websites has a lot of training material. So I learned QuickBooks when I had to do some voluntary work for an organization myself, entirely online.
Okay, thank you. We've got a question here from Ariful Islam. He says, very informative session. Is it possible to share the recorded webinar afterwards? I'm sure it is. We've got one of my colleagues is administrating this, and perhaps he can reply, and the link will be shared, the recording will be shared. Akhlaq Ahmed says, hello, sir. Whilst listening to you, it depicts that COVID-19 is actually a blessing, as most of the companies are pushed to go for automation. So I think what he wants to know, Jahan, is COVID-19 is forcing us to use digital communication. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Whilst not downplaying the terrible impact of COVID-19, I mean the lives lost, the number of people, the job losses, the impact on the economy, there is a lot of truth in what you say, because it's we were just talking about it before the webinar started. Incidentally, it has forced us to re-evaluate a lot of things in the work realm, how we do business, and a lot of us are finding, with a lot of pleasantly surprised that how much work can get done remotely, how many unnecessary meetings that we've probably been wasting time commuting to, even overseas travel. Today, we are having wonderful team sessions, and you wonder, why on earth did I bother flying? We are finding, like you said, so many other things like checks and the manual systems, where even regulators and banks have now been pushed and compelled, lawyers, to accept and to embrace digitization. So I think this is something that none of us expected, and it's out of our control. But there are some definitely positive takeaways.
Great, thank you very much, Jihan. Just I'm sharing more questions with you. Ariful Islam again asking a question. Is it possible to share a little bit about VLOX? I don't know what is VLOX.
Yeah, so that's a new one for me as well. I thought I'd mention it because I was at a session a few days ago, which is conducted by McKinsey, which was an education and awareness session about how to cope with this post-COVID business environment. So one of the things that they stressed on is the importance of cash, because cash is really king. And the presenter was in fact saying that it was always king, but today it's more important than king. So maybe it's queen. Cash is queen. And Velox was a software that was mentioned in relation to cash flow forecasting. So I've not used the system myself, but it comes very well on very good authority that it's a useful tool, particularly at this time.
Yeah, I think at this time, we're going to need that whole working capital cycle has to be really managed in order to ensure that you recover your debts in time, in order to ensure that you are liquid, in order to meet your salaries, your other payroll commitments as well, your suppliers, your customers. All that needs to be managed very well at the moment, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
So we've got another question here. Do we need programming skills to implement RPA in our company?
So I heard one of the leaders of UiPath, one of the big RPA companies, speaking in Colombo some months ago. And the way that RPA is heading is that they are, just like Microsoft spoke of, excuse me, I'll just get my my desktop power on. The power seems to be a bit low, excuse me.
Okay. So whilst Jihan is doing that, my advice to all the listeners, the young members and students and affiliates, if you're listening, is really going back to that networking thing, is do develop your networks within your organizations, because those networks are really important for your career development. The more people you know in your organizations, the more people that you can interact with and understand what their jobs are, is really important for you to grow in your careers.
Absolutely. So on the topic of RPA, so there are a lot of online programs that are available today. So it doesn't need hardcore programming skills, but right. The way that they are moving towards is to make it very, very user friendly. So just as Microsoft had a PC on every desk, that was their vision some years ago. The bots they are looking at a bot on every desk, so that each person could have a bot which he or she could configure. So it's more moving to configuration than to hardcore coding. So a lot of the type of work is somewhat similar to like an Excel macro. That type of skills are what are required. So it's not rocket science. And it is something that that again, there are a lot of programs available online. with very little investment. And these
Right.
are becoming more user-friendly.
I mean, here's a related question from Ruhail Raj, who's asking, during the RPA implementation in your own organization, Jahan, what was the most challenging thing that you faced?
Absolutely, and you must be ready for challenges. So we certainly faced quite a few. And you find that lots of little things that you would never expect come up as roadblocks. But we found that the key is you have to persist. You must not give up. Right? So we picked up first project which we were able to roll out very quickly in a few weeks, and we had a measure of success. The second project took a long time. I think it took about 9 to 12 months more than we expected. And there were so many little things, for instance, like the font sizes in the screen, the Excel templates that you put as an input, the validations, maybe some unnecessary characters that someone has put into Excel. So lots of little things came up as, it was a bit frustrating, the second project. So let's be prepared that any improvement initiative will not go smoothly. The example that I use is building a new road. Right? It's very messy in the middle. You have only one stream of traffic, you have traffic jams, and sometimes you really curse the day that they started digging it up. But then once it's done, you have this beautiful new carpeted road, and then you think it's worth it. So you will have lots of little challenges. The IT folks sometimes they're also learning skills. These are fairly new skills. So their understanding sometimes is not great. So possibly one of the biggest challenges I found is that the IT people have not fully understood what all you want them to do, what the output is. It's clear for you because you are in it, but we have not been able to properly articulate that to the IT folk.
And that takes me back to one of the other things you said during your presentation, which I wanted to bring out, was you said, if you're going to fail, fail fast. Yeah. And I mean, sometimes, you know, in South Asia, in the Middle East, our region, we are very afraid of failure, but there's a lot we can learn from failure.
Absolutely.
Why is it important? What can we learn from failure?
So from failure, the lessons are, for instance, if you look at some of the projects that I feel we could have done better, is where maybe we didn't monitor it frequently enough. Where we took a long time to realize something that we could have maybe picked up much sooner. So the whole area of project monitoring, of daily reviews, weekly reviews are hugely important. Then the make or buy decision, should you go with an off-the-shelf package which is more tried and tested but comes with more expensive licenses, or should you innovate and then do your own thing? Should you hire an outside expert who is much more expensive, or do you take a young person and groom him or her and develop that person? So those are all things that we've stumbled on at various points, and possibly with hindsight we would have done things differently. But as you said, Arif, those have helped us to learn, and it's also made us more confident to go forward. I think that biggest thing is the confidence, right? So once you failed a couple of times and you've succeeded a couple of times, you are not afraid. And in our culture, in South Asia, as you said, we are naturally, you know, have a bent for failure. I think it comes in our educational system. Getting over that hurdle, getting over that mind block, I think is the biggest positive of failure.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think there's a lot we can learn from, you know, what we've done in the past and not being sort of happy with, but we have to learn quickly. You know, that's the most important thing. We can't repeat the same failures all over again. Once you've failed, you learn how to do it correctly, apply that quickly. Absolutely. So let's get on with some more questions. In future for ACCA members, whether they should join a job as an accountant, this is more of a general in industry, or acquire skills of ERP-based software and work as an ERP software implementation. Could you guide us which one would have more scope and better for an ACCA member?
Absolutely. So I work in a shared services and a BPM called Informat, as was discussed previously. So we employ about close to 300 mostly young accounting students. And I've seen some of them, because we also work on SAP, some of them go into the finance stream, and some of them go into the ERP stream. And today, in the John Keel's IT, JKIT, the head of the customer support section is one of our former staff. He's a fantastic guy, and today he became a SAP consultant and highly regarded. And we have quite a few people becoming SAP consultants. So it ultimately depends on your what you like, what your personality is, what your natural bent is. Some people are very comfortable and have a natural bent towards being finance professionals. They like the whole area of and that's a very good stream, because I've seen people who have stuck in the finance stream have today become CFOs, become very senior in the organizational hierarchy, particularly those who have good communication skills, good common sense. And if you have a natural IT bent and you like technology, becoming an SAP consultant with the accounting background is a great combination, very highly paid job, global demand. So ultimately it boils down to you, to your personality. Both options are good ones.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Jahan. A question here from, let's go down a bit more. Mahmood Rehan, Khalid Mahmood Rehan. There are a few examples of a professional accountant to be the CEO of an organization. Jahan, you're one of them. What is the possibility of future accountants to take on the leadership role?
Increasingly, we are seeing more and more of that. Because we are seeing the new accountant becoming a key advisor to the CEO. So if you look at my organization, I involve our accountant, who's also an ACCA, in almost every critical decision and every discussion. So the accountant gets exposed then to business strategy, to forecasting the future, to looking at complex situations and different scenarios. So there is the then natural aptitude and the ability built up over time to move into the role of a CEO. So we are increasingly seeing that these days.
I absolutely agree with you. And what you must do in order to invest in yourself, in order to become a good leader, is, like you say, you have to give respect to others. I think you need to develop your communication skills. You need to volunteer for projects and for work. And those are the steps that you can take to become a good leader, aren't they, John?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's go down and take some other questions. There's lots of people asking about what courses they can do to gain these digital skills. So I'm pointing them towards the ACCA Certificate in Digital Innovation for Finance. Do explore the CPD offerings that ACCA has, and the Certificate in Digital Innovation is a brand new qualification and will certainly help. The question coming in this presentation, you talked about data science. I want to know, how can we make use of our existing skills as an accountant and make the transition to become a data scientist?
Absolutely. So the first, maybe the first step in that is data visualization, right? Being able to totally present this data. So very often finance people have been guilty perhaps of producing reams and reams of Excel sheets and spreadsheets and numbers.
Yes.
But if it can be nicely graphically displayed visually, right, that's the first step in data science. And you'll find tools like Power BI, so you can learn these are good tools to learn, very good tools to be able to Tableau to present your data to the senior management. So they would love it, right? Suddenly you find you're replacing these boring spreadsheets with very attractive digital visualization. The next step is to find links and find correlations between data. So sometimes you might need more training for this, and there are a lot of online programs. In Sri Lanka, I mentioned this 4-month program that is there. I'm sure there must be several programs available online as well. So to find the famous story where they found a supermarket, they found an interesting correlation between beer and diapers. And then they analyzed that, and they found that the need for that was because these young fathers who were coming and buying diapers for their infants also were expecting a long night sitting up. So they also bought beer. So the supermarket started, they found this correlation, they started stacking them up together, and they found an increase in their sales. So you can do wonders really with the data that we have. So today, if you just take the information that is available in your ERP in terms of costs, you can look at trends, you can look at correlations between revenue, other numbers with specific cost items. You can look at benchmarking your cost items and finding relationships and connections. The third aspect is the whole future or the forecasting aspect. Where you find data trends and then you do a projection or a simulation to senior leadership. So those ones may require maybe a little more training on tools like Tableau and also on data science. But it starts with data visualization. It starts with things like Power BI, and you've got to start the journey somewhere. So make a start is my recommendation.
Great advice, Jahan. And certainly, you know, big data and the Internet of Things is going to be a huge opportunity for finance professionals to get their head around that and to understand that that whole big data thing is very important. Some of the other questions coming in, somebody's asking about, you know, whether they can start in order for their personal development, write blogs and share blogs and things like that. You know, let me just answer that. I think that's great. You know, telling us your own story is really important. Just make it interesting. Put yourself in the shoes of the reader. You know, the reader wants to hear an interesting story and wants, you know, to get insights. Another question, an interesting question for you, Jahan, is
Arif, could I just respond to the previous one as well on blogs?
Yes, please.
So that's a great way to build your personal brand, because today HR and recruiters actually do research on new hires online before interviews and so forth, especially for key positions. So when you have, you know, insightful articles, when you have blogs, that shows it projects you as a thought leader, as someone who has ideas, someone who is good and confident at communicating, and you really elevate yourself above the competition. So I think that's a great idea.
Great idea, and you know, make it original. You know, don't copy paste things. Put your own thoughts out there and let people, you know, gather, you know, what they want from your own thoughts. The other interesting question, Jahan, is about digital currency, Bitcoin. You know what? You know, in the subcontinent, in Sri Lanka, in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, is that going to be important for the future?
I'm not very sure. I mean, it's been up and down. So there have been some well-publicized crashes, and sort of I think the research is still very open as to the sustainability of things like Bitcoin. I'm again not an expert on that. It's not widely used here. It tends to be more used for more nefarious, sort of almost illegal purposes, and the official purposes still very limited. So I think it still needs to be, we need to watch and see how it develops.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think Bitcoin, because it's you know, it's had a very erratic share price behavior. and people don't really understand it. But on the other hand, digital currency as an alternative to your orthodox currency, to your notes and coins, if governments across the region can have a central bank regulated digital currency as an alternative, that would be a far better road to go down.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got just a few more minutes. Let's just read out a few questions. How I will be able to change the mindset of owners, shareholders, directors to introduce new technology. Most of the time they seem pessimistic. So this person's saying, that they may be young, they understand technology and digital, but the leadership around them may be reluctant. So how do they change their mindsets?
So there is no easy answer to that. So maybe to pick up a small pilot project, something that will build confidence. So I remember when we embarked on our supply portal, I had to go and sell this idea to my senior leadership. So what we did is we got the data, right? So we first went and did a small mock-up, which didn't cost much. And displayed it to our client. They liked the idea. Then we went and got a cross section of a focus group of actual users drawn from different hotels across Sri Lanka, and we brought them into a focus group. We presented this to them, and we recorded their feedback. We gave them. So now we've got data, we've got evidence, right? And then we did an ROI. So you can never shirk or these sort of hard yards that you need to cover. You've got to put in the due diligence. You've got to do the ROI, right? So we said these were the benefits that we are going to get. These are the investments. And leaders are always logical. I mean, if you give them a good case, and if you backed up with evidence and with user evidence, people will not, say, and if you fail once, keep trying again.
And I think if you've got access to the board through the CFO, through the finance function, is trying to expose that board to more and more thinking around technology and how that can impact and help the business to grow.
That's a fantastic point. So in my group, in the John Keel's group, they did exactly that. They brought in various speakers to conduct sort of evening sessions. So people who have been pioneers in this, so that the whole digital quotient, the knowledge of the entire organization steps up. And in fact, the CEOs of each company were measured by the board on this digital quotient, how much they are aware. So we started bringing in people who were evangelists, who had done great things in tech, to come and speak about their innovations. And then you build the whole knowledge level and the enthusiasm across the organization.
Great. So I'll take the last question now because we're coming to the end. And this one's actually from Sri Lanka. So we're wondering if the Sri Lankan tax authorities have adopted digitization in the current COVID-19 situation.
Yes. So some encouraging signs there as well. So they have their new RAMIS system, which has been rolled out for 2 years or so. So some of the returns now are already submitted digitally, and they're just rolling out, I believe, for the taxpayers, because we are not able to pay PAYE or personal tax the way that we used to physically. Where you can actually do it through credit card. So I believe there are initiatives underway right now. Possibly some of these are already live to make it through credit card and so on online.
Brilliant. So Jahan, let me, on behalf of all the ACCM members and the students and affiliates listening to you, thank you very much for your presentation. You were the member advocate of the year in 2019. For me, you're the member advocate for 2020 as well. Okay, so thank you very much, Jahan, for that wonderful presentation, and you've taken us right across how technology and digital is going to help. You also shared your insights on developing networks and developing leadership. Great, thank you so much, Jahan, for your presentation. I apologize to those members who asked questions that we haven't answered, but we'll try and ensure that we put the answers up on the tabulation. There were lots of questions which are duplicated, but I think, Jahan, you managed to answer nearly all of them.
Very glad to hear that.
So great, thank you all very much. We look forward to welcoming Jahan again on other webinars for us. So thank you all very much. I'm just going to close off now. Jahan, any last messages from you to all your fellow members across Sri Lanka and South Asia?
Thank you, Arif, and thank you to all from ACCA, and thank you very much for attending. So my last words would be, so this has been a sort of a really transformational time. It's impacted all of us. But as we discuss, let's make the best use of it to develop ourselves. And also in some ways, so one of the things that I'm passionate about is making a difference. Through some of this, I believe, as hard and difficult as it has been, let's hope that something good comes out of it for each of us and for our communities. Thank you. Stay safe.
Great. Stay safe. Thank you, Jahan. Thank you very much. Thank you to Ruchira, my colleague at ACCA Sri Lanka, also, who's online. Thank you all very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.